I was finding that there were so many people coming in through the door who needed legal assistance, and we just couldn't help all of them.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what's going on today?
How's it going, John? Just, recovering from the Halloween festivities, and, I know everybody's kind of freaking out about the election, but I don't want to talk about that today. Today, I am here to talk with Dorna Moini. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's perfect.
Of Gavel, and what I would describe as, and I think John would probably describe as, one of the leading, if not the frontier document automation platform in legal, which I think is so cool. And so I'm excited to have you here, Dorna. Thanks for being on the show.
Yes, I'm really excited to join you both. I'm a huge fan of this podcast and of both of you independently as well. So thank you for having me.
Well, very cool. How about yourself, John? What's been going on?
This week has been busy. I'm doing some home projects right now, and so I'm trying to be at home and run a law firm, which is always another dynamic. So it's all good. It'll be short lived, but I, like you, Dan, am super excited about having Dorna on the show today. I don't even know. I was trying to think back, Dorna, of when I first got connected with, Gavel, or it was Documate, right? When I first tried Documate, I was just like, I had tried a ton of different tech tools at the time, right? I'm like trying to figure out what's going to work in my practice, what's not, like what can actually, make a difference. And then I came across Documate, and I was just like, mind was blown about like the potential, right? And I know it was at its early stages, but just an incredible platform. And I think it's been revolutionary, I think, for a lot of law firms, including my own. So very excited to kind of dive into, the backstory and everything today. So
yeah, John, you were one of our early customers. That's a good question on how we first got connected. I should probably look back somewhere in my emails, but the platform has come so far, as you both have seen, in the time that we've spent on it. So it's always funny to hear about the early customers. You should be sort of embarrassed of the first product that you put out into the world. But I can't believe people bought it back then, because it's so much more amazing now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, let's wind back the clock. Now you've got this your team at Gavel and this wonderful platform, but it wasn't always that way, right? My understanding is you were at Sidley in Austin, one of the premier law firms in the country, if I'm not mistaken. What on the earth would possess you to leave the safe, secure career path at a prestigious law firm, and now you went into the world of legal tech? What's the story there?
Yes, so many other people said the same thing around that time when I left. So I'll actually tell you a story about how exactly I got into this world. I never was planning on leaving the law firm. I wasn't thinking I need to go build a legal technology product to get out of here. I loved my job. I loved my work. And at the time, I did a lot of pro bono work, and specifically with domestic violence survivors. I was finding that there were so many people coming in through the door who needed legal assistance, and we just couldn't help all of them. And the people who we could help, we were helping on some of the more early stages of the case. And I wanted to be able to take on their appeal and go to court with them and do everything from end to end in their work. But obviously you can only do 200 hours of pro bono a year. Otherwise your firm will give you the boot probably. So we weren't able to do that. And so I sort of was thinking about how can we have a bigger impact on all of these people who are coming in through the door, who are working with these legal aid organizations that we're working with pro bono. And the answer for me at the time was to build some form of technology tool. So what I wanted to do was build something like TurboTax. I think we're all sort of familiar with the TurboTax model, but not for tax, for domestic violence survivors. So what they would be able to do is get onto the platform, answer questions that we had about them, be routed down different paths depending on whether they were married, whether the person had a gun, whether there were children. And at the end of that process, generate all the documents that you need in your case. 'Cause at the end of the day, as lawyers, we're selling words and documents, and that's where all of our mind power goes, is funneled into to give the client the perfect client experience. And then after that piece, it would with some courts be e-filed into the e-filing system. So that was sort of my idea. I was not a software engineer. I was a lawyer, but at the same time, I lived in San Francisco at the time, and everyone around me was a software engineer. So now I feel like it's like that in every city, but at the time, San Francisco was unique for that. And I got together with a friend of mine and I said, "Will you help me build this tool that I just described?" And we basically did that. So we went through, there were, there's 58 counties in California. All of them have their own little unique particularities about how you set this up. We went through, we built out this whole model. I was like the product designer and I did that in Microsoft Word because, as a lawyer, I only really used Microsoft Word. That was my tech tool. And then our the software engineer friend I had built everything out. Then we started selling it to we both started using it inside of the firm, but we also started selling it both to legal aid organizations and then also to consumers who needed assistance going through that process. And then through that process, we realized that there was something there. Like there were people who wanted to use this product to engage in the legal process, specifically for domestic violence. And what happened was we actually got a little bit of press for this domestic violence tool. It was called Help Self Legal. Terrible name, but it was called Help Self Legal, sort of a play on self help legal. And we got a little bit of press for this tool and started getting all this inbound interest, not just from consumers and people in the domestic violence arena, but from other lawyers in other areas of law and other jurisdictions. And they wanted us to help them build tools like we had built for domestic violence. So at first, we started, actually, I guess this sort of happened a little bit after I left the firm, but I was working on this product to answer your question. I was working on this product and I just felt like I couldn't work, 16 hours a day and also give my all to this product. So I usually just say it in a line, like, I left Sidley and I went and started a legal tech company, but it was definitely a long, arduous decision. Like you're saying, leaving the security and consistent paycheck of a law firm to moving towards a world where we had no revenue coming in and I was only paying a software developer to build this thing. So it was definitely a difficult decision. But at the end of the day, what I thought was, I know this thing needs to be built, but if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it. And if I do go and it fails, I can come back a year later, knock on Sidley's door. They'll take me back. And if anything, I might be more valuable because I have all this additional experience on product side, on the sort of the client side and on the tech side. So left the firm and then the future is Gavel, but I'll pause there.
At what point did you have, you leave this law firm, right? You're a startup. I mean, you're like the basic startup at its grassroots, right? At what point in the progression of kind of what you were doing, gaining momentum, at what point were you like, oh my God, this could actually be something, this could actually be a business? And you probably thought like it could be a business before, right? But at what point did you think that like, hey, I think that we're really onto something when it comes to automation and build, and documents and stuff like that?
Yeah. So in the very early days, I was doing lots of, and this is right before COVID actually. So I was doing lots of in-person meetings we actually first started with legal aid organizations. So now Gavel is a full no-code platform for anyone to build anything they want in any area of law. But at the very beginning, I had connections with legal aid organizations who were just so strapped for time that they were willing to take meetings. And so it was easy to get those like sales meetings. And the reception we were getting, even before really having like true revenue, was really mind blowing. Like people really wanted this tool. So that definitely gave me encouragement. And then as we started to get our first few customers and get to sort of break even, because I wasn't paying myself a salary, but I was paying this engineer salary. And as we started to get to break even, that was when I thought, okay, we could actually be in the black, so to speak, and continue growing this company into something that all lawyers can use.
Um, yeah, I don't remember where I first heard this. It was several years ago now, but I heard it might have been from Maximum Lawyer. I don't remember. Somebody said that um, you should treat your law firm like a tech company. And I think over time, feel like I've seen how more and more accurate that is or can be. And the way I've started thinking about it is the more that we can turn our services, the actual like fulfillment and operation side into a product that is repeatable and relatively automated, or if not almost entirely automated in some cases, the more we can shift focus onto customer support, customer experience, making that feel excellent. And, obviously, depending on the kind of law you do, there are obviously in-person elements. There's points at which that'll never be true, but I think that's should be kind of like a guiding star or a concept between, move fast, break things, constantly be improving and iterating and trying to further automate and productize. That's kind of how I've started thinking about it. What do you guys think? Does that make sense, or am I getting too crazy with the automation stuff here?
I 100% agree, and I would say there's two sort of aspects of that I definitely agree with, like thinking of your law firm as a startup. One is that legal and tech are no longer really separate things. If you are providing services to anyone, they're expecting to receive it in a digitally convenient way. Most people don't want to come into your office and do an intake. Most people will probably, and I know because we hire lawyers for Gavel for different things that we need. And if someone sends me a PDF intake form, I will not use that lawyer. So, people are expecting, even if they don't necessarily know what's going on in the back end in terms of automation, they expect to be treated in a way that meets the standards of all of the other tech tools that they're interacting with in the rest of their in their daily lives. So that's one. And then the second piece is really on the entire running a business side. There are so many concepts from startup life that I think you can take back into the law firm and that we never really were taught. So even just the fact that there's such huge attrition at a lot of the large firms, that can be remedied. There are really simple solutions to that to solve the insane costs that people have in terms of just human capital that's flooding out. And there are easy ways to, make your employees happy, make them feel like they're part of a mission and help them move forward with you.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and for the record, I do not actually have a fillable PDF that I'm currently using in my law firm for some clients. So, actually I do, but I'm working on it. Okay. So, I have probably the most advanced custom GPT that's on probate right now in the state of Missouri, but I'm still using a fillable PDF on one thing. So, um, anyway, so I wanted to ask a question about,
Unless it's court mandated. I mean, court mandated forms, that's another soapbox, but you obviously have to go with those.
Yeah.
um, So I wanted to ask you about, I know, so you have these law firms reaching out to you, right? And they're like, these are obviously, I feel like it's probably a very small percentage of total law firms that are out there, right? That are reaching out saying like, and it's the tech forward, the forward thinking people, the people like Dan and I and the other people that are, you know, early adoption of tech in their law firms, are like, they see it as a game changer, right? So they're reaching out to you. Um, what was it like, or what is it still like? And I know you guys have, you're at scale now. I mean, if you're if you're in the legal tech space and you haven't heard about Gavel or Documate, then I would be, then you've probably been living under a rock for a while, right? So, how was it when it comes to the other kind of massive chunk of law firms out there that are so slow to adopt technology? I mean, and they still exist, and it might be a generational thing. But how is that progression from trying to break through that barrier of, you're basically educating lawyers on tech, right? Why is this product important? What can it do for you? And then they use it and they're like, yeah, but we still have to, yeah, but it just seems like a hassle. You know what I mean? What was that experience like for you and the company?
Yeah, what I think is really interesting about the adoption process of Gavel and really legal technology in general is that there have been a lot of market forces that have pushed lawyers in that direction. It's not necessarily, there are some really forward-thinking lawyers like you two who are wanting to improve your practices and make yourselves more efficient and realize that there's profitability and tons of benefits for you behind it, in addition to for your clients. But a lot of lawyers have been pushed through the sort of the circumstances of the world. So first, what happened was COVID happened. People had to go remote. They weren't in their offices anymore. Before COVID, we were constantly being asked, do you have an on-premises version of Gavel? And now everything's cloud-based, like every lawyer is on the cloud. And now I would say we maybe get that question like once a year from a government organization who's got like 30-year-old software, and that's they have to work with that. So that was one of the first kind of elements from the world that changed everything. Then there was a lot of client pushback. Like clients wanted more efficiency. Clients had more pricing transparency. They were saying, why can't you? I went to another lawyer and this is how much they're charging. That pricing transparency and that communication was leading to lawyers coming on their own and deciding, okay, I need to change something in my practice. And then in the last like year and a half or so, we've had this AI wave. And even if you're not yet ready to use AI within your firm, or maybe your practice area is not right for AI, it still is making you think, okay, the old way is definitely not the way, and I need to set up some sort of improvement in my processes. So those lawyers are now starting to look at what exists out there and try to improve how they deliver services to their clients. So it's really been pushed by external factors more than the lawyers themselves, except for a lot of these forward-thinking lawyers who came on their own. And Dan, I think you're muted.
Uh-oh, we lost Dan. Well, what when it comes to, obviously starting a tech company and then scaling it, and then I'm sure there's all these kind of outside crazy things you never thought of, like probably, seed rounds or, all these other things that come into building a business. Um, what is your motivation, as a founder? I know did it start out as one thing and it's kind of changed, or has it always kind of been the same focus? Like what motivates you to kind of keep pushing the boundaries when it comes to, legal tech?
Yeah, so our vision and mission as a company is to make access to the law universal. And the way that we do that is by enabling and empowering lawyers and legal professionals to serve and reach their clients in better ways. So from the very beginning, our product was very different. We started out with this domestic violence tool, and now we are a platform for lawyers to build anything. And we don't build any domestic violence tools, but there is still that thread of what we were trying to do back then continues to what we are trying to do today, which is to enable lawyers to serve more people. And a lot of times I think we get that question of, and I doubt this will be asked by you, maybe not by you guys or by your listeners, because I think a lot of people have seen the benefits of automation. But sometimes we get the question of, automation, doesn't that mean the end of lawyers? But no, there is so much market share to go around who is not taking advantage of lawyers right now. And so what we see with the lawyers who are on Gavel is they are becoming more efficient. Maybe they're shifting their pricing models, but they're actually becoming more profitable because they're able to serve people who were maybe never able to pay their $400, $500, $1,000 an hour billable rate before on the prior model. So our mission is always to be going in that direction, and I think the lawyer and the client are aligned in that journey.
And I think you're 100% spot on when it comes to the evolution of just the legal practice and pricing and the development of new tools, right? In my own practice, I was, 6 years I did defense litigation work, right? And it was all billable hour stuff. And after 6 years, I said, I never want to bill another hour in my life, when it comes to, working as, having my own law firm. So, but, I think that there's a clashing between billing by the hour and, automating and speeding up and having these, great tools. And so it's like, you almost have to shift your pricing model. And like, that's what we did for my firm, right? We didn't start at the billable hour, but, I would agree with you 100% that the pricing model and profitability is crazy when it comes to, using automation tools. in comparison to the, one person in a seat can only bill so much time a year, et cetera, from a business standpoint.
Definitely. Yeah. I think people think of the billable hour as this amazing thing, which in some cases it can be for some lawyers. But for a lot of practice areas, it's a cap. It's a cap on how much you can make. It's a cap, unless you add more people to your firm, you can't keep going forward. And I think it goes back actually to the question that Dan asked earlier about startups and the startup mindset coming into the legal mindset. As lawyers, we've only really thought about pricing in one way, and looking to other industries to see, flat fees, subscription fees. There are so many other opportunities for us to scale up much more rapidly. I know that when I went to a law firm, when I saw what they were, it wasn't going directly to me, but when they were billing over to the client, I was like, wow, that's insane. I can't believe they're paying that much for an hour of time. But then when I went to start a company and I realized you can build something and have recurring revenue, and obviously there's a lot of hard work there to maintain and continue building and continue making a better product. But recurring revenue means you get that customer once, you make them love the platform, and you get to keep them for hopefully a very, very long time, and they continue to pay on that basis. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for lawyers to have those business models as well.
Yeah. And I think my a different microphone is working. I don't think I sound as pretty anymore, but something that I've noticed is very interesting is that I think that, you've got these flat fee models that can, like, to your point, Dorna, like, you can make more per hour as the attorney. But I think the beauty is that there's this arbitrage, there's this middle ground where total prices can come down when you're really leaning into automation. Total prices can come down. You can still make more money. And, the amount of effort and work that is going in. And so you're not working 60-hour weeks. There's this beautiful spot that I think a lot of attorneys are starting to hit. More and more attorneys are starting to hit where their prices are able to come down. And yet they're still making more money on a flat rate basis because of the way they're able to lean in and leverage automation. And that may not work in every practice area. There may be types of litigation where it's harder to rely on templatization and systemization. But in those like highly process driven practice areas, like we do a lot of probate, trademarks, maybe car accident cases, for example, you're generating a lot of the same paperwork or very similar paperwork adjusted for that case where, you could cut down the amount of time needed for that and still sell a service at a high level. What does that look like? Especially in like contingency fee practices where everybody charges the same amount. Something to think about. But to switch gears a little bit, and it's for that reason that I've kind of been of the belief of the last year or two that document automation is probably the single biggest, like if you got the 80-20 principle, it's probably the single biggest value add for law firms in terms of cutting time and adding value to the operation. What does that look like, Dorna, in your mind, as it interfaces with AI? Where's the role for templates and document automation on the one hand, and AI on the other hand? Should they be seen as in competition with each other? Are they a synergistic system? How do you think about it?
Yeah, great question. So, and I actually do a whole webinar on this sometimes on document automation or AI, which is right for your law firm. So, there's a lot of content to cover in this question, but I'll start with sharing a little bit about how we're using AI inside of Gavel, and then maybe give you a few examples of how I've seen others using AI along with document automation hand in hand, because I think that'll give you a little bit of color. So, at Gavel, we are a rules-based automation system platform. So you can come in, build out your documents. Every time you answer that a client's information is a certain way, it generates the documents in the exact same way. There is a lot of value to that because you know that when you answer in this way, you should review the work every single time, but you don't necessarily need to think every single paragraph of this document is going to be completely different like it will be with AI. With document automation, it's going to be, there are maybe tens of thousands of permutations, but when you have that one specific permutation, every single time these rules are going to be applied to this document, and this is how it's going to be drafted. So we enable you to build that. And then the way that we've incorporated AI into our platform is to make it faster for you to build these automated rules-based workflows. So whereas before you had to come in to the platform and build out all of your different questions and connect them to your documents and add rules. For example, you might say, if the person's marital status is married and they have more than 4 kids, then insert this paragraph, something like that. Whereas before you had to add all of that in manually, now we have an assistive technology through AI that helps you build the first draft of your workflow, and then you continue from there to make the final product. So that's how we're using AI. The way that I've seen other clients using it is that there are certain parts of your work that you definitely want to have in a rules-based fashion. It's consistent. The different rules that should be applied. There are other areas of your practice where maybe you need novel clauses to be inserted into a document, or there is sort of like an infinite number of answers that you could potentially give someone, or it's research heavy, or it's something that is constantly evolving. So those are the places where AI is a much better fit. Now, there are places where you might use one or the other, but I'll share one example of a customer who we have who has used the two in combination, which I thought was really interesting. It's a legal aid organization, actually based out of Illinois, and they do housing rights work. And what they've done is they actually have a chat bot to start with. So their clients, and the company is called Rentervention. They have a chat bot to start with. So a client will come onto the platform and they'll start asking the client questions like, what are the issues that you're having? The client will answer what their issue is in free form. It will give them some basic explanations of what they could do in these scenarios. And then where there is a legal remedy, so for example, let's say the person's being evicted and they need to answer that eviction notice. Where there's a legal remedy and there is a set of documents that you can provide to that client, that's when they route them over to Gavel. And then the person will fill out a Gavel workflow and generate those documents. So there's definitely a place for, for example, if you're drafting a brief and you're doing legal research, probably AI. If you're doing, probate forms, probably document automation. But then there's a place where those two can be married to really provide an end-to-end technology platform for your clients.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've seen internally too is kind of these situations where you want to pass in where some of the document is templatized, but some of the output is not, like letters to people, where it might be you need a one-off letter to tell somebody something about something, or ask them to do something, or make a demand on somebody, or whatever. And you don't necessarily write that letter the same way every time. The case, especially in litigation, the situation might be totally different. But you want to be able to generate from on-firm letterhead. You want to be able to automatically populate in the contact block of the mail recipient and the signature block of the sender and the date and all that stuff. And so what we've done internally is we had it's kind of a hacky workaround. So this will be a feature request as well. We have kind of a hacky workaround where we have like a form that gets submitted, and then it runs the prompt through ChatGPT to write the body of the letter, and then deposits that letter, the body, into a template skeleton of the letterhead. So I could see, for example, like a Gavel field that's like, this is an AI field where you type in the prompt and you preset the system prompt for that field. This like, letter body field. System prompt says, you are a special writer, a legal assistant, and we need you to polish this and make it sound pretty and professional and yada, yada. So we type in a sentence like, this is a sentence I need to send it to da, 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 da. And then it pulls in the other fields like, attorney, whatever, name, client name, yada, 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 and then deposits that body into a template letter that comes out. I could see that being super, super cool. And that's an area where I see a lot of kind of synthesis on the boundary between templates and AI, is just marrying them together in fun ways. And I think it's just cool what you can pull off now.
And a variation of what you just described is actually something we are sort of ideating on and will potentially be released at some point. I don't have a date, but
wild times we live in.
Your dreams may come true, Dan.
Yep.
I have this vision or this dream of the bots, right? The AI bots that talk to each other, right? But like, be really awesome to have the bots have access to your case management or your, your CRM, right? So that they can actually pull the data themselves. So you have, because that's kind of one of the things I have right now that I'm working on is making sure my data gets into all my systems, uniformly, right? And sometimes it can be hard, right, when it comes to depending on the API or you know the level of specific fields that you have in your case management system. So um, you mentioned that may be, something that's on the horizon. Is there any kind of is there anything really interesting you can talk about now when it comes to kind of things you're working on as different products? I know you had the bundling that was really cool. Obviously, Blueprint came out recently, which is very cool, which I'm using right now. Anything else that you can touch on for new products for Gavel?
Yes. So, sort of on the AI front, maybe I'll go a little bit deeper into one thing that we're working on, which is having AI intake, which I think really goes along the lines of really actually both of the things that you guys both just mentioned, which is having an AI question type where you can either add information or load documents, and then at some point actually connect to other document sets. So, for example, you might say, I want to connect this to my document management system, and I want to be able to pull all the data from my document management system. To date, we have been, we connect with other practice management systems where you can pull in like the client matter field and it'll automatically fill out all the rest. But there is so much more data out there and more sophisticated ways for us to pull that data for you and do that intake job in a more seamless way. So I would say that's the main thing we're working on and sort of ideating on a little bit. And in addition to that, there's just so much data that's collected inside of Gavel that we want to also allow you to query your data better. Right now we have fields where you can filter those fields, but we want you to really be able to ask questions of Gavel about specific clients and help yourself get answers to give you and your clients a better understanding of what your status is in a particular case. Those are the two big areas that we're thinking about right now.
Yeah. And I've seen in the software development space, companies like Cursor.com. I don't know if this has come up internally at Gavel with your dev team, but they, I think, have hit it out of the park in terms of how to really deploy AI directly into your work environment. So like for people who are not familiar, Cursor is basically it's a text editor. It's where you write your computer code, right? And they've embedded AI models into your text editor. And like, if you want to write a whole new paragraph or a new block of code, you just hit Command K and then say, I need a function that does this. And then it'll spit it out. And what's particularly amazing about it is that it has your whole code base, all the files you've written for that software application embedded in a vector store. So it knows what you've written, even if it's a million lines of code, it has all that stored in working memory or can be quickly referenced to bring it back into context if it's forgotten that. And what we haven't seen in a really great way, I think Lex.pages or something like that is the closest, is integrating that into like written Word documents. And like, why can't I, in Microsoft Word or Google Doc, why can't I hit like Command K, like rewrite this paragraph for me and watch it in real time, like spit out new lines there. Like other people are doing it. And the other thing that's neat about Cursor is that you can embed your own API key. So you don't have to pay anything for it. It's free. You just embed your own API key from Claude or OpenAI or whatever, and you get charged for tokens, but like you don't have to. So I'm hoping that we'll see some of that. And I could see some really magical interaction there between document automation to get out a first draft of something huge, and then coming back through and doing fine tune tweaking. And a spell book has touched on it a little bit, but it's legal specific. It's very expensive. So I don't know. I'm excited to see more of this synthesis and integration between template automation and AI.
Have you guys used Microsoft Copilot at all? I feel like there's a lot of things that I hear about them doing, but I actually never hear about anyone that are along the lines of what you just described, but I never hear anyone actually using them. So using it, even though obviously it's Microsoft and I'm sure thousands of people are using it.
Yeah,
I heard
millions.
I was gonna say, I heard that somebody was saying, Copilot's gonna have access to all your stuff on your computer, and like, who knows where it's going, and this and that. So I'm like, oh, I don't like the sound of that. But
yeah, I just bought the new M4 MacBook Pro got announced like a couple days ago, and I pre-ordered it. And it's supposed to have Apple Intelligence embedded into the operating system at the operating system layer. So now we're supposed to be able to have, Siri / ChatGPT, because they have a partnership with
Oh,
OpenAI.
okay. I was going to say Siri is not too good, so I wouldn't.
No, it's kind of like a hybrid situation. Where Siri is getting smarter, but it also Siri can call ChatGPT when it's like, I'm not smart enough to answer this question. So it's supposed to have access to the operating system layer to your cloud management and email, and be able to like query your whole computer, not just like, what's over here, over there. So it's, we're going to have Jarvis, like real Iron Man Jarvis, pretty darn soon here. I'm all for it.
Jordan, I'm curious. We're talking about new tech products, and there's probably a lot of lawyers out there that say like, "Oh, I had this great idea to change, to implement a new feature or this or that into a system or a tech company, right?" How hard is it, and how long does it take to actually from like an idea to like full blown implementation? Like, I'm curious on that cycle.
Oh, it's so much harder than any of our customers ever think. People would very often come to, I don't know if you're talking about our side, like telling us features we should add, or lawyers wanting to build their own products. But on our side,
Yeah.
we get people telling us all the time, like, "Oh, you should add this feature. It's really easy." And we're like, "Oh, really? It's really easy?" And we take it back to our team. We're like, "No, that's actually a pretty big task."
Yeah.
But we prioritize those feature requests in the right way. But on the customer side, we get a lot of lawyers saying, "I want to build this legal tech tool," and that is so. Talked about document automation. I think that's most of what we talked about in terms of what Gavel does so far. But what we, from the original story of that domestic violence platform, what we really want to enable lawyers to do is be able to build full-fledged legal technology products. So meaning, so sort of like you've done, John, with Probate, take these tools that you build and put them in front of clients and build something like LegalZoom or TurboTax, but a version that is lawyer backed, that is trusted by the end user. And that's where I think the lawyers who build have a competitive advantage. And because that's exactly what our platform is meant to do, it's actually pretty easy to, like, every lawyer is building the same type of thing. And so we've given you the building blocks to be able to do that. So it's actually not that difficult, except for all the ideation and information you need to put into it and the templates that you need to build and your own legal knowledge. Other than that, the technical part is actually not that difficult to set up and launch. Like, I've seen people launch a product for simple things in a few weeks or less.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting because, the ability for an attorney to deploy these tools is, I think, easier than it's ever been. And I want people to who listen to the show, or, or maybe this is the first episode you ever heard, and we're like, we're hearing all these terms about AI and stuff, and they're freaking out. Like, it's important to understand, like, a lot of this stuff is really not that hard to leverage. Like, if you're starting a firm, or you've been in business for a couple of years, like, you've had to learn probably more stuff compacted in the last couple of years than you've ever had to learn in your entire life. Like, how to market, how to sell, how to close a case, how to manage a multi-case caseload, all these like things that you didn't know how to do. Like, don't be afraid to take the next step and, learn what Zapier is and how it works, or learn, what Gavel is, how to implement. And if you don't want to implement, like, there's always people that can help, but don't be afraid of this stuff, because it can, spending a couple hours, even a couple weeks learning how to leverage this stuff, or even longer. If it means, like, for the next 10 years, like, you're not going to have to draft that template every time. Like, can you just like imagine the amount of times and like stress saving that you're incurring there? So,
And Don, I know that you guys have people within Gavel that will actually build the stuff for you, right? I mean,
Yes, exactly. So it's very easy to build on Gavel, but a lot of people, like you're saying, don't have the time, and they say, "I know I want to do this, but just don't have time because I am serving my clients all day, every day." So we have people they're called Gavel experts. And so what they can do is, most of them come from the legal field in some way, a lot of paralegals, a few former lawyers. And what they can do is they can take your idea and basically implement it inside of Gavel. So if you just give them your forms and give them a description of what you want, they can go ahead and build that all out for you and then package it up and deliver it to you and have that sort of iterative process of making sure it's exactly what they wanted. So there are definitely ways to get up and running, whether you have the time or not.
Yeah, and, yeah, no, that's amazing because that's always that crutch that somebody has is why I'm not doing it. Well, I don't have the time. So that's
And
important.
another thing that we're actually doing right now is we are building more what we call pre-built workflows for our customers so that if you are in an area that has a lot of court forms, for example, like let's say you're a divorce lawyer or you're a probate lawyer, we're building out packages of those forms that are pre-built by us. Then all you need to do is just either run with it and use them in your practice or make the tweaks that you want to make it perfect. So the learning curve is much, much lower. If anyone right now, we're actually doing some a campaign where if anyone has court forms that they want automated, they can bring them to us and we'll automate them for them for free as part of our pre-built workflows groups.
I I wish I had that, 5 years ago, Dorna,
I
but
know, I'm sorry you still had to build it the regular way.
Yeah. And I wanna touch on this for a second. You mentioned something like about being able to build, your version of LegalZoom. And there's some people out there who are like, I can't compete with LegalZoom. They're a billion-dollar company. And I think that's the wrong attitude because there was somebody who I recently, it was a while, it was a few years ago. I forget her name now. She's a kind of a creator in this template space. And one of the observations that she made is that in law, there's all kinds of specialized specific knowledge. It is like more than any other industry. Like it is so segmented, like down to like the county level that you will never, ever, ever see a massive national company able to deploy, even with AI, they will not be able to deploy at that granular local level, something that you can't. Like let's take a simple example. Like let's say you do estate planning and you put together wills and trusts. LegalZoom does wills and trusts. But does LegalZoom do wills and trusts the way that they need to be written in Missouri to be compliant with, Missouri's Medicaid rulings on these issues in order for an S&T to qualify correctly in your standby? Like, no, they don't. They don't even include any of that stuff. So if you're, a local attorney who knows how to do this stuff and write better documents or appealing to a specific focus area, but also appealing to a particular niche. Like let's say you want to target like professional gym studio owners. Like they have specific needs that LegalZoom is never going to cater to them particularly. You know what I mean? Like the package of documents they need, the types of clauses they need, the things that are specific to that. Like there's so much opportunity out there for identifying those niches within and finding your own little blue ocean that LegalZoom will never be able to touch. That I'm totally with you, Dorna. I think there's a lot of opportunity to leverage tools like Gavel if you can find those spots and move fast and deploy and market it.
I 1,000% agree with that. I think LegalZoom is a public company, so there's a lot of information about what their business is and where they're getting revenue from out there that's publicly available. So LegalZoom, most of their revenue comes from business entity formation tools because that is a broad area. I think they do, I might be flipping them, but like 10% of LLCs and 5% of C Corps in the US. So they've really like gotten a good hold of that market. But there's so much niche area of law, or even like not even that niche area of law that LegalZoom has not covered. As an example that kind of goes along with the one that you gave, Dan, we have a lawyer on our platform who has a platform called MSA, EMASSAY, and it stands for MSA, like Master Services Agreement. And he specifically does that for creatives. And he's built a business on that. So there's so much opportunity for building new products there. But then in addition to that, I would say if you're a lawyer and you are the face of your legal platform, you have another competitive advantage over LegalZoom because you are not just saying this is a tech platform, but this is a tech platform that's built by a lawyer. And like, here are my credentials and my experience that leads to these documents and this work product being stellar, top quality.
absolutely. I think we're getting a little bit closer to time here at the end. I want to ask one kind of more general question. Dorna, over the next 2 years, what is the vision and what is your goal and what do you want to see happen at Gavel or just in the automation space in the next 2 years?
Yeah. So at Gavel, we really want the tools that people are using to build their automation on in Gavel to reach the masses. And that goes back to this concept of lawyers benefiting and their clients benefiting at the same time. We have 92% of low income legal needs go unmet. 77% of legal services that people take advantage of are not provided by lawyers. They're just people doing DIY and taking advantage of it on their own. So there's a lot of opportunity for lawyers to better the system and be part of the system while also making profits and making a more equal and just legal system. So that's where I hope more and more of these Gavel tools that are helping a lot of attorneys, maybe within their firms, maybe in some ways in client-facing ways, to become full-fledged legal products that can be operated at scale.
Got it. Well,
Awesome.
one of the things we do every week is we come up with a tip of the week, and it can be related to what's a neat tool thing you did, or a neat way that you used a tool, or a book you read, or something interesting. Just anything like that comes to mind. Um, you got anything for us this week, John?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna throw out one thing that I'm actually currently working on that's obviously relevant for this conversation. But I started playing with Blueprint, Gavel's Blueprint AI tool, and I remember way back in the day, actually, inputting every single question, right? The question that I would be, for my building my interview route, right? But it's really cool tool. I think it's very well put together when it comes to you simply upload a PDF, and I have my that PDF I talked about before, about that fillable PDF, that's the bane of my existence in some level. We uploaded it into Gavel and it built the entire interview automatically, right? That's what it's supposed to do. A very cool, easy tool. It's going to be super nice to be able to um, start using that as a digital piece and have the data go directly into Gavel from my intake form, right? From that interview. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to play with Blueprint a little bit more and see what it can do.
Very cool. So one thing, my tip this week is I found out that just within the last few weeks, Google Workspace, if you're a Google Workspace user, they launched a native e-signature function built into the platform now. So if you're on Google Doc, or if we have a PDF open in Google Drive, click that three-dot menu and look for the e-sign option. They have a very simple, very easy to use e-sign platform that's now baked into Google Workspace. So if it suits your needs, it doesn't yet have an API, so you can't programmatically connect to it. But if you send a lot of stuff that way, very easy to use, very easy to keep track of and send automated or send electronic signatures without having to pay for another subscription. So check that out. Another awesome tool in the Google Workspace toolkit. Dorna, got anything for us this week?
That's a good question. So I was sort of thinking about different things that might be useful for lawyers. I would say going to this concept of you are a law firm and you want to run your law firm like a startup or like a business. One of the books that I actually haven't read recently, I read it a little while ago, is Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce's book, Behind the Cloud or Beyond the Cloud. And it has it's a very interesting book, and it shares a lot of interesting marketing tips on how he got started and started building his practice. And so for any lawyer, especially who is starting to build legal products and putting those out into the world, I would highly recommend that as a fun read and one with lots of really interesting tidbits about things that you might be able to incorporate into your legal practice.
Very good. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, Dorna, or check out Gavel, how should they do that?
Yes. So I am Gavel is www.gavel.io. You can do a demo on the platform if you just go to our website. I am Dorna at Gavel, Dorna _at _Gavel on pretty much all the different social media platforms. And I also talk a lot about technology tips for lawyers. So if anyone wants to follow along, I'd love to share more.
Very cool. Well, that is it for this week. Thanks again to our guest, Dorna, and thanks again to John. If you enjoyed the podcast, please go to Google, wherever you get your podcast, the Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever. Leave us a 5-star review so that more people can find us and enjoy the show. And if you want to take the conversation offline, join us in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group, where we continue these kinds of conversations every day. Keep learning, guys. Get out there, build something cool. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks, John. Thanks, Dorna.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dorna. We appreciate your time.
Wonderful to be with you. Thank you for having me.